Welcome back to A View to a Grill. I'm Johnny, and today we are going to see if we can smoke an entire brisket with one vent adjustment on the Weber kettle using a slow and sear. I'm not sure if you've ever noticed or not, but on the housing of the ash suite, Weber conveniently put 3 dots on the newer models for airflow control. The dot all the way to the left is the closed position. The second dot is the low airflow position or the smoke position. The third dot is fully open, and that is represented by these wavy arrows representing maximum airflow. On the Master Touch Weber kettle, the dot is under the second oval from the left, so that's where I'm going to place my setting. And if you look at mine, I have already marked it just for an equivalent vent adjustment on the 26 for the smoke position. And today I'm not going to use an aftermarket thermometer. The only thermometer we're going to have is the one that Weber put in the lid. And to probe for tenderness, I'm just going to use this metal skewer. Now let's talk about the setup. Today I am using the slow and sear. Inside the slow and sear, we're going to have 3 chunks of hickory. We're also going to be using a trip pan and my Craycourt cast iron grill grates. And in the slow and sear, I have packed it with as much Kingsford blue as I possibly can. I've also left a little bit of space in the corner of the slow and sear, enough for 14 to 20 briquettes. Our brisket trim today is a backyard trim. I am using my own blend of salt, pepper, garlic, plus onion powder. Now, I do all of this prep work the day before my brisket cook. If you want to see my detailed brisket prep routine, check out the link above. It's the next morning and it's game time. So let's get the lid off, the fire started, and the chimney starter on. While your chimney starter is getting started, it's a good time to take out your brisket. The charcoals are almost ready, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in my water reservoir with hot water. Now the charcoal is ready to go. It's time to get the charcoal in the slow and sear and the brisket on. I'm also doing another little experiment for myself where I place a wood chunk underneath the grate just to see if that helped for the moisture to run off of the flat. We'll get the lid closed and make our one vent adjustment. Getting a quick check on our time, it's 8:02 in the morning. And today we're going to be keeping track of this on an hourly basis. When you're using the slow and sear and you have your water reservoir filled up, it tends to create a lot of steam. When looking at the vent on the top of your kettle, you may see a lot of smoke coming out, but just be aware that that is smoke mixed with steam. So if you're wondering if your smoke is too dirty at this point, it probably isn't. To show you what I'm talking about, I'll just get the camera close to the vent and you can see my camera fog up. As I move my camera away, it dries out. At 9:01, we're not going to do anything. Just take a quick look at the temperature, and the reading is a good reading, but remember it's over the fire. This is a one vent adjustment brisket experiment, and we're just going to ride with it. Whatever the temperature says on the thermometer, we're going to call it good. It's 10 o'clock, so let's take our first look. The brisket looks good. It's getting some nice color on it. You can see that it's puffing up right here just a little bit, and that is a sign of cooking your brisket at a high temperature. Even though we did that one vent adjustment to the low airflow or smoke adjustment, it's still cooking my brisket at a pretty high heat. We're going to go with it, and we're also going to spritz the brisket since we have the lid open. We'll get the lid on. The vents are right where we left them, and just keep going. It's now 11 o'clock. Let's go ahead and take a look at the temperature on the lid of the Weber kettle. The lid temperature is reading about 425, and that has me a little interested in what our fuel situation is. Now let's take a look at the brisket. So we'll get the lid off and check on things. Actually looks like our fuel situation is fine. And also the brisket is looking pretty good. It's gotten a little darker and the bark is starting to come in nicely. Now I still have some pooling on the flat, so it looks like my experiment with the wood chunk is not working out the way I wanted it to. And while the lid is off, we are going to spritz it again. Also, I'm going to move all the charcoal over to one side just so that we can get a longer burning time. Now let's get the lid back on, and the vents are right where we left them. It's now 12 o'clock. We're going to check the temperature again. It's still hovering right at 425, 20-ish degrees. Now let's get the lid off and take a look at the brisket. The brisket is looking good. The bark on the point is set, but we still have a little bit of pooling on the flat. At this point, there is no more water in the water reservoir. We're going to go with it. We're not going to refill the water reservoir. And I'm also not going to spritz the brisket anymore. I want to see if I can get the bark to set just a little bit better on the flat before we wrap. I'll go ahead and move all of the charcoal over to one side and refill the charcoal. So let's get the lid back on, and the vents are right where we left them. The water reservoir is empty, and now when I move my camera closer to the vents, there's no fogging of the lens. So all of that smoke that's coming out now is just smoke with no moisture in it. I'm going to go ahead and get some beef broth and a little bit of Worcester sauce and put that in a measuring cup just so I can add that to the brisket when I wrap it in foil. It's 1 o'clock. We're going to do a quick temperature check. You can see that since I added extra charcoal in the slow and sear, the temperature is going up, and we're going to get this brisket wrapped. Let's take the brisket out of the Weber kettle, put it on top of the foil. I'm also going to probe for tenderness now, just to see about how long I have to leave it in the foil. And it feels pretty good. I don't think I'm going to have to leave it wrapped for too long. You can see along the side, the flat was trying to separate from the point a little bit, and that's a sign of a high heat cook. Color looks good. We'll just pour in that mixture of beef broth and W sauce and finish wrapping up this brisket, making sure we have this brisket wrapped up nice and tight with as little space between the brisket and the foil as possible. We'll put that right back on the indirect side, and the vents are right where we left them. Now we're going to need something to let this brisket rest in. I like to use the chill chest. The chill chest is a collapsible insulated cooler. And my wire rack and pan with the brisket in it fits in really easily. There's a lot of space in there, so you can put a nice sized brisket in there. It's now 2 o'clock, so let's do a quick temperature check. And this really surprised the heck out of me. The temperature is reading just above 600 degrees. I actually got a little worried. So I have got to know what the temperature is on the indirect side right now. I went over and got my Inkbird IBT 4XS, dropped the ambient probe in, and let her go. So the ambient probe right above the brisket got to 388 degrees. I was a little surprised. I thought it'd be a little more hot on that side. I was really expecting to be in the 400 range. Since this is a one vent adjustment brisket experiment, we have to go with it. We'll get the lid off and probe for tenderness. I'll use my skewer to probe for tenderness, and it really felt good. I really thought about taking it off at this point, but I thought I can get a little more tenderness in some of the areas. So we're going to close the lid, and next time I'm going to check, we're going to check in 30 minutes because it's really close. Now it's 2:30. We're going to get the lid off and probe for tenderness again. And now it feels like room temperature butter. So we're going to go ahead and take the brisket off. I'll just get it in the chill chest. We're going to cut this X pattern on the foil and bend the flaps over so that the brisket can rest. The brisket feels good. It's got some bounce to it and some jiggle, so I'm happy with the brisket so far. I'm also curious to know what the temperature is of the brisket since I pulled it off. And here I'll be using my IBT 4XS to see what the internal temperature of the brisket is. It's 207 degrees. It's right there in the done brisket range. So I'll close up the chill chest and let it rest. This brisket is now under 10 pounds when we started cooking it. It's small. A brisket this size will probably need about an hour and a half of rest. It's been an hour and a half. Let's see what we got. It has a beautiful color. It looks plump. And the bark actually set pretty good, even on the flat. Now let's take a look at what it looks inside. And I just love the flavor in this first bite of brisket. The smoke ring looks good. You can see it glistening in the camera, so it's got moisture. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with what I have so far. Now let's go straight to where the point meets the flat and see what we have there. We'll get that cut and get a closer look. Now I'm just going to barely put any pressure on there because I don't want to squeeze all the juice out. I'll just press it just a little bit and you can see the juice flowing out. So this is a nice brisket. We'll take a look at the other side and it's juicy. The smoke ring looks good. It tastes good. There's still a little bit of au jus, which I just call brisket juice, in the foil. Now, did we answer the question? Can you smoke a brisket on the Weber kettle with a single vent adjustment? And the answer is, surprisingly, I am surprised, truly. The answer is yes. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching A View to a Grill. I'll see you next time.